All right, taking you live, we're going to Sydney. New South Wales Police Commissioner Karen Webb is speaking. This is on Senior Constable Kristian White being found guilty of manslaughter of 95-year-old great-grandmother Clare Nowland. She was tasered, of course, in that Cooma nursing home in 2023.
This should never have happened. The officer's employment is currently under review, and that process is underway. His employment, in terms of his ongoing employment, is also subject to a legal process, and that will follow, and I expect to consider that matter next week. I'll provide an update on those issues when that's available. The officer in charge of the investigation has updated the Nowland family this afternoon about the court process. And it's my intention to reach out to the Nowland family after today's events to talk to them about the court outcome. There is not a lot I can say about today. As I said, the court has reached its verdict. There are employment matters that require a proper process to be followed. And it is possible that there may be an appeal, so I need to be very careful about what I can say. There is a detention application hearing tomorrow, and that matter is obviously a matter before the court. So I will now ask if there are questions, on the basis there may not be a lot that I can say about this matter.
Will New South Wales Police be reviewing their taser training for officers?
We did review our taser policy and training in January this year, and no updates or amendments were made. The policy and training is appropriate. The substance of this matter is about the application of the use of the equipment, the taser.
Do changes need to be made regarding which officers are sent to nursing homes? Are there any changes there?
Oh, I think that's, they're operational matters, and they're decisions that are made when calls are made to police, and that will be based on the circumstances at the time. Much was said last year about being called there in the first place, but as I said, there's still a legal process, and I don't want to venture too far in jeopardising any of that.
Has the police force learned any lessons from this?
Certainly we always reflect on any tragedy, and that's why we caused a review of the taser procedures, the training. There's been a thorough investigation. It's now been before the court, and the verdict was handed down today. And I reached out to the Commander of Professional Standards Command an hour after the verdict was reached in terms of the officer's employment status.
So just to be clear, have you begun proceedings underway in 1D?
Those, as I said, the officer's employment status is under review this afternoon by his home command, and that process needs to follow, and that's process that needs to happen in terms of paperwork, and the 181D process will likely come before me next week.
Have you now watched footage of the tasering?
I did watch footage some weeks and months ago at a stage in the 181D process under what we call a show cause process. I did watch that footage.
And what's your response to what you saw?
It's very, and I had commented at the time, or subsequently, it is difficult to watch, but again, I want to be very careful about what I say, given that the court proceedings are still afoot.
There was a lot of criticism, obviously, at the time about the handling of this issue by police media. You yourself were criticised for not immediately coming out and speaking to the media. Have you learnt any lessons from that?
Oh, certainly. I'm always learning. In hindsight's a wonderful thing. I may or may not have done things differently, but I think what remains important for me is that at that time, and it still remains important, that family was front of mind for me, for them to be informed, that they were informed by me, and I spoke to them directly, which I did, And so it is my intention to speak to that family again very shortly.
Why is an officer's employment not terminated immediately upon a manslaughter conviction? The jury's been out for days, and this happened in May last year.
Well, the verdict came in today, as you know. As I said, termination of employment under Section 181D of the Police Act is a legal process in itself, and the process has to be followed for it to be legally valid.
And if Kristian White is detained tomorrow, is that going to happen?
The 181D consideration is not contingent on what happens tomorrow.
So how long does that normally take? You said there's a meeting this afternoon
For
a termination of employment.
no, his employment status is a separate matter. The ongoing employment is a separate matter that I expect to hear next week.
If there'd been a not guilty verdict, I know you said before that the 181D process had started a long time ago. Watched the video. If there'd been a not guilty verdict, would that process have ceased, or do you think it would continue to?
No, the 181D of the Police Act is the Commissioner's loss of confidence in an officer, and all of the evidence would have come before me regardless of the outcome.
Has he been suspended with pay this whole time?
He has.
So fairly circumspect there, Karen Webb, but speaking obviously there is an ongoing review of this officer's employment. Kristian White found guilty of manslaughter. That, well, horrific. It was a shocking case when you look at the vision of Clare Nowland, a 95-year-old grandmother on a walking frame, tasered and dying from the injuries. Kristian White has not yet been sentenced, but that verdict handed down today in that court. That incident happening in Cooma last year.